Hello, I'm Julia Cordova. Thank you so much for subscribing to my YouTube channel and liking my videos. I really appreciate it. Last week I took a little bit of an unscheduled break, and I just want to thank the people who reached out to me and just said that you missed me or expressed concern in some way. I really do appreciate that. It means a lot to me. So let's talk about what happened last week in the market, not with me. Okay, so we finally had a dip that didn't get bought yet. So the question is whether or not that dip gets bought this week. And I will tell you that I think this next week will close lower in all of the three of the major indices than we closed last week. So I think we'll have red weeks in NQES and the small caps. And I also think that despite my intermediate bearish bias for oil, I think that we'll at least get some sort of initial green thrust. And I'll say why when we get to the oil chart. I don't know whether or not I will sell it. It depends on how high it gets. I think that the metals, gold and silver, will decline as well, but whether or not I buy that dip depends again on how low it goes. So I have to tune in to Twitter to see whether or not I do anything like that. But I'll tell you on the charts what my plan is. And that's basically it. Except I also want to say that I do think on a longer term basis, do I think that, let's say we don't get the dip bought next week, do I think that we have a top? No, I do not. Nothing looks super-de duper-de ooper-de toppy. No. I don't know how long it will be if we don't get the dip bought next week. But we'll talk about that on the individual charts because it's actually really interesting to me. Okay, ready? I'm super ready. Ready? All right, let's talk charts. Okay, so let's start off by looking at ES or SPX weekly futures. So we closed the week, let me just make this one big. We closed the week below this pink line, which for me was sort of a big effing deal. And here's why. Because we hadn't had a close above it since way back in 2016, and then we did recently. So that was like a rut-row. But then right after we had a close above it, which was a big deal, then we sort of flashed back below and retested, which I bought, if you remember, and then got back above it again. So what that said to me, that price action said to me, was that this is not going to hold if we back test it again, just because we weakened it by chopping on it. Now, I was looking at some of these candles here, and you see this. This is usually when ES goes down, it's got these big, kind of tail candles. And here, for example, it doesn't have a big tail, but look at the next week. If you squint your eyes and you blur it, that looks the same as these, right? It's like down, but then you go more up and down. So that's a 2-week hammer candle, right? So we've just had over and over again, and same thing here, right? Anytime we've had a down week, the next week, if it didn't get bought, the next week has been fierce. Same thing here. Any down candle, next week fierce, unless it got bought that same week, okay? That's been the pattern for, I don't know, a long time. Let's say since the end of the pandemic, that's been the pattern. Any red week that doesn't have a tail on it gets bought the next week. So that's why I could absolutely be wrong about my feelings, but I don't think I am for a few reasons. Number one, we've got this RSI not quite at support yet. I think I would like to see it at a support before I think about buying it longer term. So that's one. Next is the positioning. Because it is above this, because I don't know if I want to call it a fakey breaky yet. Kind of looks like it though. And if it is, that means that we'll see some significant downwards action. Now, overall, is it bearish here? Like, liquidate the 401k, get the F out of there? No, it's not. It's not even below the 9 MA. Calm yourselves, bears. Calm yourselves. However, like I said, I do think we do close the next week a little bit lower, and I'll show you now on the daily. So here we have a daily channel that we've been in since April or so, mid-April. Actually longer than that, but I'm too lazy. Anyways, a long time. Okay, we've had this daily channel going on, and we rode the top of it all this week, and then finally, well, I guess into last week actually, and then okay. So I think it's very likely that at a minimum, sometime this week, will definitely, well, I don't know, definitely. I think it's very likely that we'll test the top of this, I'll call it a parallel line, which is 44.37. That also happens to be the 9 MA on the weekly. What? And it's not that far down. So it could be that overnight on Sunday/Monday, we test that and then start going up. In which case, I sincerely wonder whether or not the folks will want to test it during market hours, or if we gap up and then we don't get there. I think that's actually before Monday at open. I think that's actually a little more bearish overall, because I think the New Yorker types will want to test it. So those are sort of the two trading scenarios I'm looking at this point. However, I am positioned short, and we'll see what happens. So yeah, so I marked off these parallel lines happen to be gaps. This one was a measured move. So I think overall it wouldn't surprise me at all to test this first of all, living with chemistry line at 43.80 on the weekly, but also lower than that, potentially. We've got an MA at 44.18, the 50. We've got one of my lines at 44.13. So I do believe that some point this week we will test that. Whether or not it goes whoop remains to be seen. But that's where I think we're going shorter term. It's not bearish overall at all longer term, unless it gets below 43.56 or so, which would not only be one of my measured moves here, but it would be the bottom of the channel. So we'll see whether or not we get there this week, but that's sort of what I'm thinking. This dip might absolutely get bought for next week, but then whether or not that holds will be something else. Okay, let's look at NQ. Okay. This is weird, right? I was looking at these, this is weekly. I was looking at these candles and I was like, what did they look? They look like, I'm old, right? So I'm thinking like, they look like those Pong candle, like the Pong things from Atari, where it, like, I don't know. They don't have many wicks, like almost no wicks here in any direction. Like, I mean, yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me to see one next week in one direct, or more than one, in more than one direction, because this is just, it's just weird, right? Right. Anyway, it wouldn't surprise me at all for NQ to see a back test of what was resistance before at 15,209. And because we haven't met the bigger measured moves here, we also didn't meet it in ES, by the way. But because we haven't met my bigger measured moves, that's why I don't think it looks overall toppy. Even if it really poops from here, I think it's something where it'll get bought. So eventually, I don't know, but eventually. Okay, so 15,209 is actually very similar, very close. And I know these don't seem close, but this MA, well, it might be actually. So as of last week, the MA was, the 9 MA was 15,171. It'll be a little higher this week because price is still above it. So yeah, I think it's pretty good probability that we'll retest this 15,209 level. And I think initially, at least, that will provide some support for NQ. And let's see. Yeah. And even above that, though, the 15,358 is the 20 MA. If price gets there, I would imagine it might hang out there a little bit. We might see a reaction there, in other words, before, or if it goes lower. Otherwise, 15,464 is something I'm watching because that was a previous measured move on the daily. And then, all bets are off, so to speak, above 15,612 or so. And then it will likely go to this move if it gets above there, in my opinion, because it's had so much choppage here that I think anything that gets in there again will, and I mean, look, it really tried to go up Friday and screw me. Yeah, it tried. It did not succeed. Anyway, because of all these wicks here, if it does get up here again, I think it'll be serious. That's why I do think it's going to go a bit lower before it does that. Okay, so, and let's look at the small caps. That's what I mean. So this does not look, this price action overall does not look toppy, but we are back in the triangle, however, supported by the handy dandy 9MA. What do you know about that? However, I think it will be contained. Maybe this one will close a little bit higher. I don't know, but I think it will be contained potentially above this 2196 level and potentially held within the 2251 level if it gets back up there. That would be a nice place to take a short if you're so inclined, unless you're buying the dip and you're like, nah, Julia, you're super wrong. It's going straight up to the moon. Then that's, this is actually the end of the week last week, then was a nice place to take it because of the 9. So we'll see. I mean, I definitely could be wrong. I don't know. Who knows? And like I pointed out, all of those candles that didn't have huge wicks, the next week were bought. So, unless this time is different, that might happen again. But it's possible. It's possible. Okay, let's look at Bitcoin. Oh, I forgot to pull up Ethereum. That's okay. I won't cover it. Oh. Okay, so before I had talked about this potentially being a neckline, this level here, and it turns out that it has provided, while it's not a neckline yet because we haven't done a shouldery thing yet, it's provided some support. Pretty impressive, might I say. Look at that. Dudes. But anyway, I'm still overall very bearish about Bitcoin. I had said that if it closed above the key, it was very likely going to get to 51515, which it did, and then fakey breaky above that. Yeah. So that makes me feel good that it got to my measured move after I said it would if it closed above the key. And it also makes me feel good that it went down because I think it's really bearish overall for all the reasons I've outlined many times before. But I could be wrong. Anyway, it's within this channel right now. Let me go ahead and put a price marker on it. Okay, so it's still in an upward channel unless it gets below here. So I think that most people who are sane, unlike myself, would not say something is bearish unless it's below. Well, I mean, it did get below here though. I mean, look, see, it's like weakening it, and then so far it's just pretty much back tested it. So above here, maybe it'll get to the key. That's what I'll say. If it's above this line, potentially price action will get to the key or so, but I don't know. This is a question mark. And then for now, I maintain that it's bearish, but it'll be extra super bearish if it gets below 44,300, which is this neckline, especially a close below 44,300, just like a close above here would be bullish. Okay, that's what I'm going to say about that. Now let's look at GDX. Well, I have a strategy here. So I've said before that generally speaking, GDX requires that the market goes up for it to go up. So my strategy here is to convert some of the shorts that I have on right now to long GDX when I take them off. So I think that GDX potentially might even outperform at least, I mean, maybe not NQ, because I know that the people that I watch for macro are still super bullish in Q, and they should be, because like I said, that we haven't met our targets there yet or anything, but my personal strategy had been to convert some of that over. to at least some of it over to GDX when I close them. So we have an open gap that got left here at 30.85. It's a little bit below this key area, which is 31.27. And then I was thinking, but if we get there, like, I mean, depending on how we get there, I guess, is whether or not I'm going to buy the effing dip. Right now, it certainly does not look bullish. And there's a scenario I'm looking at for metals that I'll talk about a little bit about that maybe means that this week we again have a little bit of a down week in GDX before potentially, at least one, I think, before potentially going back up, but we'll see. There's definitely support between 31.27 and 30.85. Oh, I just spit. So we'll see. We'll watch it. We'll find out what happens. In the meantime, we filled this previous gap that was left and then just went down. So it would be nice to fill this and then go up, but I don't know. And I'm not sure whether or not it's going to look too great. If it gets, it's not going to look too great actually, unless it closes above. It's got to close in my, well, not gotta, but it's going to look a lot better to me if it closes longer term, if it closes above 30.85. I'll say that. Okay. So I had published this on Twitter here. Let me go back. You know, I had talked about buy silver FJP Morgan, you know, and then I got rid of my long there because, or at least most of it, because I saw that gold was at resistance, and we had the potential at the time to form, you know, with this neckline here, to form potentially a head and shoulders. So that was one of the setups I talked about that was good. And I'm sorry I missed last week. But anyway, yeah, so potentially I went ahead and put a neckline there. It's a little bit below 1838, but and I don't know that gold will go all the way down here. I'd certainly like if it does bounce from the key area, which is where it closed on Friday, that would be great. It might do that. That would be super good. I'm going to turn slightly more bullish if it gets above this previous hourly gap. Hourly gaps are pretty rare. So if it gets above 1809 or so, I might potentially turn a little short-term bullish. And then if it gets above 1835, I'll get much more bullish. But I think it's more likely that, I don't know about initially, but that the week sort of fills out below the key a little bit. We'll have to see. But this on the hourly looks a little bit like a bear flag, right? But it hasn't broken yet. It's still very close to support at the key, which is a key across all time frames. So we'll have to watch that. But I think if you're a metals bull, let me just say, and you're not like you don't play. A lot of these guys on Twitter, I don't know how they do it. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But it seems like they have super tight stops all the time. And there's like, I'm gonna, short NQ with a 10-point stop. I'm like, wow, that's impressive, because like sometimes I will squeeze my sphincter for a lot more points than that. You know what I'm saying? Like if I think I've got the direction right, but I'm just like earlier, I like sort of plan to be wrong, if you will. Anyway, if you're the kind of person that believes in metals longer term, below this key level and above this 1744 level is a great place in my mind to buy the dip if you believe in it longer term. Okay. If it gets below that 1744, and I may not, because I mean, this last dip was 1750 area. So I just think it's a superb place to buy the dip longer term if it gets there. But anywhere actually between this key where it is now and that level, in my mind, is a great place to buy the dip if you believe in it longer term. It may stay here for a while, but I like it. I like it here. If you're a longer term bull. Okay, so with silver, we did manage to hold this weekly trend line, but not by much. And the measured move off of this bear flag is 24.43 on the 4 hour. So we'll see whether or not we get there or not. And I will turn more bullish if we get back above this trend line, which depending on when it hits, I never know when to put the thing. But let's just say, okay, oops. If it gets back above, I'm giving it a while here, 24.28 or so. That's like okay, maybe it'll get to back to this resistance that I had said in silver. I had said that it was back testing it, and boy did it. It hung on it for a while, and it was like, then it was like, nope, which is cool because we got that sense from gold, watching gold, right? So that, I'm kind of proud of myself. That's cool. Okay, anyway, I will potentially be scalping long at 23.43 if we get there, but I think it probably will be a scalp only because at this point on both the weekly and the daily we are below the MAs, and it might turn into a swing. I hope it does, but that's where I'm looking to buy next if it gets there, 23.43. Okay, now let's talk about oil. Okay, so why am I short-term bullish? And I mean really short-term, potentially just for the start of the week. I'm not sure. Well, it's because, first of all, look at this candle, but also look at XOP compared to ES and NQ and the RTY. Like, look at it. It's while it's lower, it's certainly not like wah wah looking, and it had every reason to be. Okay, now longer term, I absolutely think that this gap down here in the 73 area is going to get filled, but potentially what we might be doing here is a giant head and shoulders. So for this, and it bounced perfectly off my channel line, which is another one of my setups. I'm sorry. Anyway, for this week, the top of the channel that it already back tested, so maybe it'll go straight down, and that would not bother me. But the top of the channel here is 86.63. So if we get above 86.63 in XOP, then it's going to start to look like it's going to do I mean, I don't know, but so far it hasn't closed back above here. So a close back above here, and potentially everybody will start talking about oil going back to 80, and then it'll screw everybody again. So from an oil perspective, I'm looking at potentially, well, if I'm, depending on what's happening, and I might go long on open. I have not decided yet, but 72.52 is where I would start to see some resistance if it does start to moon this week, and then 72.88. So basically the high 72s I think is a good place to at least take a scalp short, and then depending on where XOP is and whether or not I think I can swing it short, that's great. And by the way, I should mention, so in crude oil, this does look bull flaggy-ish. Okay, it absolutely does. And last week was a breakout. Was it a convincing, like, whoa, dude, breakout? No, it wasn't. But that doesn't mean anything. What it means is that if we get some upwards action, remember how gold had that giant bull flag that everybody was talking about, and then it like fakey breakied, and I was like, guys, this doesn't look bullish. Let's just wait because it hasn't done that yet. So far, we just have a breakout. But if it gets below 68.11 and starts to look like it's going to close below there, look the F out below, in my opinion. Okay, so while it might be bullish short term, anything below 68.11 and I don't like that. And especially below 65.65. Okay. All right, let's look at Natty. Okay. So I've been talking about Natty being super bullish for quite some time, actually since this breakout here. And While I think the longer term price action is probably going to get stupid, higher, higher. I went ahead and I did take I'm afraid to say this. I did take a little bit of a short, not for longer term, but just intermediate term, and not super leverage, but a little bit. So we'll watch that. If we ended the week right at 4.938, 4.939 is sort of my level to watch on the weekly. I think potentially because we haven't even touched the 9 MA for the daily since August 21st, potentially we could take a ride down there, but I don't know, and stay nimble because I'm ready to be wrong on that one. But I just think it's intermediate term. We might get somebody saying, well, see, it couldn't get above 5 and see what happened at 5, but we'll find out. We'll see. And if it gets, but I will tell you, if it gets anywhere close to 501 again, abort, abort. That's what I'm doing. All right, let's look at Joe. Okay, so we closed the part of the Joe Long here right at resistance, which pleased me. However, I rebought it a little too early, which did not please me. But ultimately, Joe is one of those things where I'm like, all right, well, if I'm wrong, I hate to say it because I'm supposed to be a technician, but I'll just hodl it because it looks overall at this time, it looks super-duper bullish. And in fact, the more time that it spends consolidating, it looks kind of like a triangle right here. Oh, I should draw that in, right? Okay, anyway, just squint your eyes. You see how it's looking a little bit like a triangle here? So the longer it triangulates without breaking down, the more bullish it is overall, in my opinion. Okay, it could get stupid. It could also get up here. I mean, look, it's not that much of a stretch. The longer it triangulates without breaking down, the more I think bullish it is longer term, depending on your time frames. I'm still okay with it. Okay, that's all I want to talk about. Thank you so much for subscribing to my YouTube channel and liking my videos and commenting. Thank you. It makes me feel good. All right. Anyway, hope you have a great trading week, and I will see you on the interwebs. Okay, bye.